These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
I think she's probably been put in there because according to Donald Trump, she's a 10.
Bahar stunned viewers when she said Donald Trump's press secretary, 27-year-old Karoline Leavitt, only secured her position because of her good looks.
I would like this young lady this is her first job. I would like her to do a little homework.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. Here is Whoopi Goldberg saying she only got the job due to wokeness. What? Nurse, you and your old mate Joy Behar may have your jobs because of wokeness.
Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
No, Whoopi. Corinne Jean-Pierre got the job because of woke. But do not smear a competent professional woman like Karoline Leavitt with your nonsense. And
a single comment on a daytime talk show sparked an uproar across the nation. When Joy Behar implied Karoline Leavitt only landed her role as Donald Trump's press secretary because of her looks, the conversation exploded. But was this really about appearances? Or is it a battle over identity politics, changing media standards, and a power struggle between mainstream outlets and a younger generation of political disruptors? Buckle up. We're about to uncover how one 27-year-old shattered the comfort zone on The View and why it's a sign of deeper shifts in American media. Tensions ran high the instant Karoline Leavitt's name came up on The View. Joy Behar casually tossed out the claim that Karoline was there only because she was a 10, accusing Donald Trump of hiring her for superficial reasons. The audience seemed caught between shock and confusion. How had an otherwise routine mention of the White House press secretary turned into a jab at her looks? It wasn't long before other hosts chimed in, turning what could have been a measured political discussion into a hurricane of scrutiny aimed squarely at Karoline's credentials. Viewers at home went wild on social media, questioning whether The View, so vocal about women's empowerment, had crossed a line by shaming a woman based on factors that had nothing to do with her competence. Before she became a lightning rod of controversy, Karoline Leavitt was a determined young operative climbing the ranks within conservative circles. Critics tried to paint her as an unqualified newcomer, but that narrative fell flat once details about her past work in political strategy trickled out. At just 27, she'd already managed communications for political figures and proven herself in several behind-the-scenes roles. She even credited her success to forging authentic connections with local communities. However, the moment she stepped into the national spotlight as press secretary, detractors wasted no time labeling her as a token hire. For those who support her, Karoline represents a fresh face challenging establishment norms. For her critics, she's a convenient symbol to attack the Trump administration. Either way, her sudden leap to the forefront of American politics hasn't gone unnoticed. As the debate on The View heated up, Whoopi Goldberg insisted that, without wokeness, Karoline might never have had a chance at such a high-profile position. She framed wokeness as a natural progression of civil rights, something that paved the way for women, minorities, and historically marginalized groups to step into power. Karoline countered that modern wokeness has become a far cry from traditional civil rights advocacy, calling it a rigid ideology that discourages open debate. This back and forth sparked a broader question. Has the original mission of inclusivity and fairness been hijacked by political agendas? Those who side with Karoline argue that the term wokeness is now used to attack anyone who holds a dissenting opinion. Meanwhile, defenders of The View see it as the logical extension of social justice, pushing society forward. The real question, though, is whether the show's fiery exchange helped clarify anything or simply added to the confusion. Karoline didn't stop at defending her own career path. She took aim at mainstream media as well. She pointed out that The View has often shaped public perception with little resistance, pushing certain narratives while sidelining dissenting voices. Now, she says, the tables are turning. Public trust in mainstream outlets is waning, and more people, especially younger viewers, are seeking alternative or independent sources. The shift in media power dynamics has left shows like The View scrambling to maintain relevance. Karoline then unveiled her plan to grant new press credentials to independent outlets, a move that outraged The View panel. To them, it felt like an erosion of traditional journalistic standards. But to supporters, it signaled a democratization of media access. Legacy outlets may call it dangerous. Karoline calls it accountability. Barely had The View segment ended when hashtags about Karoline Leavitt surged across social media platforms. Opinionated viewers took sides with lightning speed. One camp sided with Joy Behar and Whoopi, criticizing Karoline for dismissing wokeness and claiming she was overlooking the historical struggles that allowed women like her to be in the White House. Another camp accused the hosts of hypocrisy, using women's empowerment as a talking point until the woman in question happened to be a conservative. Between the heated tweets and viral clips, it became clear the debate was more than a fleeting daytime TV scuffle. It struck a nerve in the broader culture war, revealing deep divisions over whether mainstream shows like The View still speak for the average American viewer. As the episode gained traction online, the conversation veered from, is Karoline qualified, to is she being victimized or championed for her identity? Sunny Hostin insisted that holding Karoline accountable wasn't about her being female or young. It was about the administration's track record and policy choices. But critics fired back, asking why so much emphasis was placed on Karoline's looks if it wasn't about identity. The more the show's hosts tried to shift focus onto policy, the more viewers were reminded of Joy's, because she's a 10 quip. Meanwhile, Karoline flipped the script, challenging the hosts to judge her on her performance rather than her personal attributes. The entire fiasco boiled down to a fundamental tension. Can The View champion women's rights while discrediting a woman on national TV based on shallow assumptions? If mainstream media expected Karoline Leavitt to shrink under the spotlight, they were mistaken. She announced a series of reforms in the White House press briefing room. 2 front-row seats, once reserved for White House staff, would now rotate among independent journalists to ensure a variety of viewpoints are heard. Furthermore, hundreds of press passes revoked under the previous administration were reinstated. This was a direct challenge to legacy outlets and a signal that the days of one-sided coverage were over. Of course, this made The View's panel livid. They argued it would reduce journalistic standards, even as critics pointed out that the show itself has been accused of pushing biased narratives for years. The bigger question is whether these reforms signify a sustainable pivot toward diverse voices, or a temporary shock tactic designed to shake up the media status quo. Now that the initial storm has somewhat passed, The View finds itself in an unusual predicament. Historically, this daytime talk show enjoyed a reputation as a highly influential platform where established hosts could confidently shape mainstream opinion. However, the recent dust-up with Karoline Leavitt has forced them into an unanticipated spotlight. By attempting to discredit Karoline, pointing to her age, appearance, or political affiliations, Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg may have unwittingly magnified her voice rather than diminishing it. Karoline's supporters argue that this clash exposes a persistent double standard. When a conservative woman speaks out, her credentials are immediately questioned, and her ideas are often dismissed with personal barbs rather than being critiqued on substance. At the same time, viewers who traditionally align with The View's more liberal stance are divided. Some feel the panel's response was justified, wanting to see Karoline held accountable for defending certain Trump-era policies. Others, however, believe the attacks ventured into territory that betrayed The View's own ethos of championing women's empowerment. This tension places the show in a precarious position, as it grapples with the broader challenge of staying relevant in an era where audiences expect nuance and authenticity from media personalities. Critics argue that The View's approach to Karoline lacked both, relying on quick jabs rather than thoughtful debate. Yet, for all the controversy, the panel remains a cultural touchstone. Its millions of loyal viewers are now watching closely to see whether The View will adapt its style of conversation or cling to the same combative patterns. The central question is whether the show can maintain its credibility after what many perceived as an unprovoked personal attack. In any case, The View has no choice but to reevaluate how it engages with politically charged topics, particularly when the risk of inadvertently amplifying an opposing voice is greater than ever. The fallout from this episode underscores that even a well-established show is not immune to the shifting demands of modern audiences, who increasingly value open dialogue over partisan soundbites. The clash between Karoline Leavitt and The View reveals more than just a personal spat. It's a snapshot of a changing media landscape where younger political figures are unafraid to challenge established voices. It's also a cautionary tale about using identity politics to dismiss or elevate someone, a strategy that can backfire and erode trust. As viewers, we're left to ponder a crucial question. In an age of social media, independent journalism, and shifting priorities, how much longer can legacy shows rely on old tactics? Will The View adapt, Or will it continue losing ground to emerging platforms where accountability and open dialogue reign supreme? Whatever the outcome, one thing is certain: this firestorm isn't cooling down anytime soon. As more people question the credibility of mainstream media, the push for diverse, transparent conversation grows louder. If you want to stay in the loop, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications, because with everything changing this fast, you won't want to miss a single update. After all, this is just the beginning of a much bigger conversation about power, truth, and who gets to define both in America's political arena.